be the preterite that we're going to be talking about. I'm actually going to start with Estar up here. This is a new version of the verbs that we've been practicing. You probably have heard me mention this before, but last module that we did, we focused on something called imperfect. And I mentioned, at least I usually did, that the imperfect was a version of the past tense. And I think I explained why, but I'm going to re-explain again. I mean that it's a version because it is an imperfect tense, as in it's not perfect. Think of it as like bridging the gap or like filling in the middle ground between the present tense, which was like a Spanish one kind of theme for the entire year, and the present and the past, which is what we're doing today. So this imperfect tense is in the past, as in it started in the past, but it's something that could continue and eventually still hit the present that you are currently talking about. So it's like half present, half past, more past than present, but either way, it's like a mixture of both. This version, the preterite, as in that's like the grammatical term for this lesson, as in this topic, the preterite is specifically just past tense. There's no continuation of something. There's no like kind of middle ground or could possibly be both things. It's like it happened in the past, it stayed in the past. So that's what we're going to be practicing now. It's going to be like the second step of now that we kind of know the imperfect and we talked about doing stuff in the past. Now it's officially just the past and it doesn't continue into the present tense. We usually do set and estar together because they both mean to be, and they still both mean to be, of course, in this case, because it's the same verb. It's just now we're talking about back then than currently. Only difference, though, is because you see the verb ir up here, is because in the preterite, in this past tense, like official past tense, both of these verbs use the same chart. That's why they both are above this one chart that you see here. So already what was confusing, ser and estar, because they both mean to be, now might be even more confusing because ser and estar both mean to be, but then ir also uses the same chart as ser. So it's going to be a hot mess, but we'll go through it slowly. We have doctor in place that hopefully you remember from last unit/module. That is still going to be beneficial for you to remember / practice now that we're doing this, because the verbs are the same, right? They still mean to be. It's just that now we're doing a different type of spelling for it. So if you have notes on it or if you remember stuff about doctor in place, keep that in mind as we do stuff this week with ser and estar /ir as well. So just for you to know, it's like a mixture of last time that we were working on stuff and, of course, the new things that we're adding now. So I want to get through, talk about the actual charts, and then move on to your next lesson, as in the next video that I do. So ser means to be. We know this. Previously, we were looking at the spellings that were like yo era, I was. That still is the past. It's just a type of the past. This new version is still going to be I was, because in English you don't really have too much differentiation when it comes to this. It's just like I was. That's it. Talking about the past. Here we have two types of I was. So we're going to be using the fui, in this case, for this unit, this module. Of course, because imperfect is still a type of past tense, you can still reuse like old words, old charts from back then. But especially when it comes to like your quizzes, this is what you're looking at right now. So don't confuse the tenses because they can get confusing because they're both talking about like I was, but there's a difference. There's a whole different chart, right? So for this chart, yo fui, that's how you pronounce it, fui, would be still like in the using doctor, right? When talking about a description, an occupation, or origin, depending on what O you put first. A characteristic, when dealing with time, dealing with relationships. It's still the same reasons why. It's just now you have a different spelling. So yo fui un estudiante. I was a student. I'm not anymore because I've graduated. But either way, I'm like describing myself, right? Or even as like an occupation. I was this thing. That was kind of my job, being a student. Either way, it would still fit doctor. Tú fuiste. You were. Tú fuiste mi amigo. You were my friend, right? Not anymore. You were in the past. That's not happening anymore. Él, ella, or usted, one person. Fue, that's the bottom one here, F-U-E. I know you might want to pronounce that as fui, but that's not it, right? It's yo, él, ella, or usted fue, my bad. So, él fue mi maestro. He was my teacher, right? El año pasado. He was my teacher last year. Not anymore. Nosotros fuimos atletas. We were athletes. As in, happened in the past, not anymore. Ellos, ellas, or ustedes fueron mis estudiantes. They were my students. whatever group I was talking about. So again, they were last year or whenever it was, but they're not anymore. So it deals with stuff that was back then, but not anymore. And then when it came to last unit, the imperfect, it's stuff that was back then, but could still have been right now. But in this case, it's not. So the second verb, ir, which means to go, is already, like I mentioned, a bit of a confusing verb just because all conjugations of ir never look like ir. Said kind of they don't either, but ir is like always not going to look like it. At least for said, you had a little bit of like s or eres or somos that look a little like it. In this case, for ir, you have this chart. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, and fueron. So it's really not going to look like ir at all. Last time, you had like iba and ibas, iba again. So they had an I. That was a bit more of a hint, I guess, as to what word it was. But again, it was stuff that happened in the past and could have continued. This chart is just, it happened in the past. It stayed in the past. So yo fui. Yo fui a CSUB. I went to CSUB. Not anymore. Tú fuiste a middle school. Whatever middle school you went, right? So again, you went, but not anymore. Él, ella, usted fue a... ¿Dónde? Fue a Los Ángeles. They at one point went there, but they're not there anymore. Nosotros fuimos a la tienda. We went to the store. You did that. I mean, you could have gone to the store every single day, every 30 minutes. But either way, it was an instant that happened back then, and you're currently not there anymore. That's all this really is. Currently not in the same position or the same location. Lots of people, ellos, ellas, or ustedes, fueron a... What could I say? Fueron a el parque. They went to the park. So this is all in the past. The second verb, which we usually put together because they both mean the same thing, is estar. So previously, this verb, estar, was like yo estaba, tú estabas. So again, it kind of looked like the verb estar. This one, this new conjugation, still does kind of look like it. Your root is still there, the est part of it. It's just a different ending. So this still means to be. And hopefully you remember from, if you had me for Spanish 1, you talked about it in Spanish 1. But if not, from last unit, that you use doctor for said, and you use place as like an acronym to help you choose for estar. Place stands for a position, as in next to, behind, over, under. A location, the mall, the store, whatever I talked about in the first little group for going. An action, so something that's being done. A condition of something. It was broken, it was new, it was old. And an emotion of something. I was happy, I was tired, I was sleepy, whatever it was. So yo estuve. Yo estuve, what can I say? Yo estuve en el trabajo. I was at work. Not anymore. Right now I'm working from home. Tú estuviste trabajando. You were working. So it's an action. Again, we're looking at these new endings, the A and D O endings for the ing words. Later this year, we're having a lot of grammar this year, as we always do, but all new grammar, right? So we're going to get to those endings as well, but I keep using it for this because that's what one of the categories for the place is. So hopefully it'll help you kind of hear it often enough that when we get to it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember mentioning that. So, tú estuviste trabajando, you were working. Él or ella or usted estuvo nervioso. That person, he or she was nervous, maybe because quarter grades were due. Pretty much like this last week or so for you guys. Nosotros estuvimos, what can I say? Nosotros estuvimos dentro del carro. We were inside of the car. And ellos, ellas, or ustedes estuvieron contentos. They were happy. So again, stuff in the past. Because we have technically 3 verbs now, at least in this lesson this week, it's going to be a little confusing just because 2 of them are connected because they mean the same thing. The other 2 are connected because they use the same chart. So just keep this page with you. It's going to help you. The more you practice it, the easier it will get because you'll constantly in your head be thinking, oh, that's an action. Oh, that's a description. Oh, that's a time. And like slowly choose. And then based off that context, right, what words do you see in the sentences? You'll get to see, are they talking about something that they were or talking about somewhere that they went? Because if it's a place, right, you're going to be talking about ir. So that's kind of just going to slowly help you get a better idea as to what word should I be using in this situation. So if you do have the notes for the doctor in place, I recommend you use them. If not, maybe I personally will go back and add doctor in place to the bottom of this handout so that it's there for you guys, which might even be more beneficial just because if you didn't take notes last time, you're going to still want to do them this time. But either way, this is going to help you for these new conjugations that we're going to be practicing. So next video/week that we work on, we'll have 2 more verbs that we've been doing this entire year, but with a different conjugation. But the good thing is that the vocab for this unit is action words, right? Like all the chores that we talked about at the beginning. So those are much more easy to change because they're actually verbs. And so this, like in this case, preterite tense. Last unit, we kind of couldn't change our vocab too much because they were all nouns, as in they were rooms of a house or the things that go in a house. So they weren't built to obviously be conjugated, which is why we didn't get to practice it too much, as in from the book. This time we'll get to do a bit more because literally everything in this chapter, at least for the specific unit, is all going to be verbs. So we'll be using those in a second as well, like with our preterite tenses that we're practicing now. Of course, I'll see you in class. Ask questions if you don't understand stuff, rewatch stuff if you don't understand stuff, and hopefully it was relatively helpful. I will see you guys in a couple of days then. Adios.